In this video, we're going to replace the rear caliper on this 2012 Mitsubishi Outlander. With a 17mm socket, we're going to remove this rear wheel. So we're going to go ahead and remove our caliper. Two 14mm bolts on the pins. We'll remove those now. Once they are backed out enough, you can go ahead and just pull the pins straight out. Now your caliper is free. In this vehicle, the front pad will stay attached to the caliper. The rear pad may stay on the rotor in the caliper bracket, or it may come off. Just be aware that it may fall. And this one stayed in place. And you can go ahead and move your caliper out of the way, avoiding putting strain on the brake hose. And now we can remove our rear brake pad. Just go ahead and grab it from the top or bottom and push out and away and remove. So now our caliper bracket is still attached to the knuckle. Two 14mm bolts. We'll go ahead and remove those now with a 14mm socket. Just be aware that when you remove your last bolt from the bracket is free. Don't let it hit the ground. And slide your bracket out. For the process of replacing your caliper and caliper bracket, you don't need to remove your rotor. You can put a couple of lug nuts on there to hold your rotor secure while you work on your caliper. I'm going to go ahead and remove it for this video. So go ahead and remove your rotor. In this case, ours is pretty clean. It'll slide off. If yours is not and it's stuck, feel free to put a little pressure on the back with a hammer or around wherever you can, pry it forward. Be aware not to bend or disrupt this too much. Straightforward. We're going to remove this front brake pad off the caliper. It's held in by these two pressure clips to the caliper. I'm going to try and see if we can pry it out. Go ahead and remove your pad. So now we're going to go ahead and disconnect the brake line. Have some kind of spill protection down. You should have some brake fluid come out of here. I'm going to use a 17mm wrench. Break this free. And this line is back to a bolt here. So the more you spin this line, the more you're spinning the line itself. So what you want to do is break this line free, pick up your caliper, and try not to stress the line, but spin the caliper. Again, just be prepared for some brake fluid to come out. So with our new caliper, we'll go ahead and attach our brake line. What you want to do is get it started by spinning either the brake line or the caliper. Once you have it started, you don't want to continue to spin the brake line, as it won't actually spin freely. You'll just be binding it up. So now we'll just rotate the caliper. Now that we have it snugged up, we'll grab our 17mm wrench, tighten it down, And once we place it on the car in place, we'll go ahead and just make sure it's tight. Once you have that tightened up, we'll go ahead and put the caliper aside, making sure not to put any stress on the line. Now we'll go ahead and install our new caliper bracket. Make sure these surfaces are clean so the caliper bracket mounts flush. Place that in place, and your two 14mm bolts. Thread in. Now we'll go ahead and torque down our caliper bracket, 43 foot-pounds. So now we're going to install our hardware on our caliper bracket. Just go ahead and line these clips up and pop them in. All right. And one of the reasons that we took the rotor off is when we put on new hardware for our caliper brackets, we like to put some grease on there. This gives you access to put grease on there and access to put the clips on without putting grease on your rotor itself. Makes the process on this part nice and easy. So now that we have grease on our caliper bracket hardware, we can go ahead and reinstall our rotor and continue with the process. Install the rotor, and if you want to, go ahead and put a lug nut or two on there to hold it secure. So now with our caliper bracket installed, hardware greased, we're going to go ahead and install our pads. You see these two tabs? These go into our hardware. We can sit the bottom one in, press it into place, and rotate up, clip in place. So we'll go ahead and install our pads on the front of the caliper. You can see these two clips here. They will sit in these channels here. So just go ahead and slide the clips and push down. And give it an extra squeeze to make sure it's all the way down. Your front pad is installed. For our two caliper pins, we're going to put a little grease on those. With our pins greased, we'll go ahead and rotate our caliper into position. Make sure to slide your piston over the rear brake pad and keep note of making sure your boots are not folded back. And then we'll go ahead and install our pins. They'll slide in to the point where they thread. We'll get the top one in. We'll go ahead and put the bottom one in. And now we'll tighten them down. Now we'll go ahead and torque these down to the factory spec. So now with the 14mm socket, we'll go ahead and torque these down to 74 foot-pounds. Now that your caliper is in place, go ahead and make sure that your brake hose is tight. So we're going to bleed the brakes now. To do that, we're going to pump the brakes 3 or 4 times. So now that we've put pressure in the line by pumping the brakes 3 or 4 times, we're going to gravity bleed this system. Ideally, you have pressure in your hose to the caliper. So we're going to go ahead and take this bleeder cover off with an 8mm wrench. We're going to open up our bleeder until we get some fluid coming out. What we're looking for is a clean flow with no breaks in the fluid. I'm going to leave this like this I'm gonna go pump the brakes again. Pump and hold. So he's gonna pump it 3 times and hold down. What we're gonna do is go ahead and crack this bleeder screw. What we're gonna look for is a consistent flow of brake fluid out of here. Any breaks, any air bubbles, any foam would indicate air in the line. You wanna repeat this process until you get a clean, consistent flow of brake fluid. We'll just crack it open a 1/4 turn. And what we're looking for is this flow just like that. Go ahead and close it up, and we're good. And then we'll go ahead and replace the bleeder cover cap. And now that you've finished bleeding the brakes, what I like to do is come back with a spray of brake cleaner and spray all your wet areas. That way you can tell when this flashes off and dries, any wet areas after this should indicate leaks, and it should be easy to identify. So once you've gone ahead and bled your brakes, what you want to do is go to the front of the vehicle, check your master cylinder, and make sure your brake level is between the minimum and maximum. If you need to add fluid, add it to below the maximum. Now we'll install a tire. So with the 17mm socket, we'll go ahead and snug up these bolts. Now with the tire on the ground, so it's unable to rotate, we'll go ahead and grab our 17mm socket, set it to 73 foot-pounds torque, and we're going to run around these lug nuts in a star pattern to lock the wheel on.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.